This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Resistance is my love language. Guys, welcome to the Bear Brain Podcast, where the goals to rise above it all, stay elevated, create that infinity, and up your you. I'm your host, Isaiah, and we are coming towards the end of the year and also coming up on 300 episodes of the Bear Brain Podcast. And when I say 300 episodes, I mean 300 episodes of the main content of the podcast. So that's not including my bonus content for the subscribers. That's also not including the Night Owl, right? The stories that I've been writing for the last 7 years. But 300 episodes of me showing up to this space and showing up scared, honestly, showing up uncertain, showing up nervous. And I was talking to my buddy about this thing that I have in terms of resistance in a lot of things. And it's funny, the things that I resisted the most have been the things I've been very successful at. Okay? Very successful. Wildly successful. And I've noticed it. Okay? So I've learned to recognize that resistance for me has been an indication of love. And when I say love, you know, when we align ourselves with the things that are the best for us, that is us aligning ourselves with what it means to be loved properly, right? In essence, okay, when we talk about this loving concept, it's not always a romantic process or romantic love. It's simply recognition of what allows me to feel aligned, what allows me to feel supported, okay, what allows me to feel the most successful and confident. And I've just noticed over time, a lot of things that I have resisted to, a lot of things that I have resisted, okay, have been the things that have been the most right for me, all right? When it came to posting content, I had a lot of resistance. When it came to starting this podcast, I had a lot of resistance. I was, my first episode, when I first started this whole thing, I always said, I'm like, man, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I also don't know what people are going to want to listen to. Who is going to want to listen to anything that I have to say? That was a constant thing. Okay, when I think about this podcast, that was always in my head. Maybe I'll run out of things to say in like the first 2 weeks. Maybe I'll run out of life, life experience. And it's just going to stop. Well, funny enough, almost 7 years later, this podcast has been the catalyst for so many other things I have managed to create successfully. And it's all because I decided to do it scared. It's all because I decided to recognize the resistance that I had and why. All right. Now, when it comes to this concept of resistance, a lot of times we kind of confuse it, because we will face resistance in spaces that we shouldn't even be in. Okay, let's say that you are trying to force connection with a person, whether it's a romantic person or whether it's a friendship or whether it's a job or whether it's, a certain team, right? I think a cool acknowledgement that we often don't look at is like, even in the entertainment industry, let's say you want to partner with a certain company or conglomerate because you believe that these people are going to make me successful. Okay, and you have this awareness, and because you have that modality of thinking, you try everything to align with them. Okay, and you keep facing rejection, resistance, or just a lack of communication. That's a constant for you. But you keep trying because you say, well, maybe not right now. Maybe not right now. But I should keep trying. And we need to understand or recognize when we are trying in the wrong direction, okay? The efforts that you are making are going against yourself. And when you are making efforts that go against your greater good or against yourself, you are now just being busy versus productive. And you may ask, well, how do I know the difference between doing something that goes against myself or something that goes for me? Look at everything else that's happening in process. Okay, one of the things I've noticed for myself is when I am trying to make something happen that's not for me, when I'm trying to make a connection happen that's not for me, everything else kind of seems stale and indifferent too. Even things that are current in my life, it just seems like there's this constant static or disconnection or dysfunction. Something just doesn't feel right or at ease, okay? And the resistance that I'm facing is kind of a signal to, hey, this probably isn't for you. But you're trying to pressure it. You're trying to control it. You're trying to make it something that it's not. You're trying to make yourself something that you're not. This may not be aligned with you, okay? And when you recognize that and you keep going, you start to build resentment and disappointment. Those are always good indicators too of whether or not you are doing something that you're supposed to be doing. Versus, like I said, for the podcast, I face so many resistant moments and so many moments of doubt in terms of, well, if I should be doing this, am I qualified for it? Is this right for me? Doesn't make sense. And every time I did it, I came back to it and it felt easy. It felt like a flow, right? It felt very fluid and it also felt necessary, okay? A lot of times the things that are for you, despite resistance, will feel necessary because you are not anxious, okay? You are not dysregulated. You are not desperate. You're not operating from this place of fear. You're operating from a place of confidence and fruition. That's how I like to think about it. And a lot of times it's more of an energetic process that's going on, which is why it's great to spend a lot of time with yourself in solitude, not isolation, but just spending time with yourself and asking yourself the important questions of what is important to me, okay? How does this thing feel? How does this person feel? How does this career path feel, okay? How does this journey feel to me? Because if you can recognize and just understand how this thing feels to me, then you'll have a better understanding of when I am resistant to something. Am I resistant because greatness is on the end of this and it's requiring me to change and be uncomfortable? Or is there resistance because this is not where I belong? Okay. I always like to use like the high school archetype or dynamic that we see in movies or in real life as an example of just like what it means to try to fit in versus to flourish, right? Think about the kid that typically isn't treated or seen as the most popular. They're invisible. And then finally the cool kids have them sit at the table, right? The entire time they're sitting at that table, they're thinking like, well, how can I make sure I stay here? Or I hope everybody likes me here. Or what if they don't like me? Or what do I have to do to make sure they like me? Well, I have to change who I am, right? I have to become one of them versus just continuing to be myself, okay? And I want you to apply that principle to life, okay? How often am I looking to change my being? Not just kind of change my modality or my disciplines or my effort or my perception, but change my entire being to be something that someone else will like or I perceive them to like versus just showing up and being my absolute self. How many times have you thought about abandoning yourself to acquire something that you think is going to change your life in a positive way? Because the moment you have that thought process, the moment you have that idea, is the moment you are doing things improperly. And that's the moment where resistance not only shows up, but there is going to be a lot more dysfunction that takes place too. Versus when you are just having a certain level of resistance because you are on, you're kind of nearing where you're supposed to be. Okay, and that resistance comes in, that doubt, that imposter syndrome. Okay, that's a big one, right? Imposter syndrome. And sometimes imposter syndrome, my buddy, he was telling me this quote of a comedian, and he said, basically, imposter syndrome is usually the results of you becoming unrecognizable at a rate that you're not used to, okay? Because you have accomplished a lot of things, your mindset is very different, your people may be different, okay? How you talk to and treat yourself, like what you have been able to accomplish has happened so quickly, okay, in such abundance that your nervous system, your self-limiting beliefs, all these things that you're familiar with are not familiar with this new, all right? And it happens so quick. It also kind of happened without their participation in certain ways. So they're like, whoa, no, we don't know this person, right? We don't know who they are. They're not allowed in. Okay? I've been really taking moments to notice how I've become so successful at what I do. And the reason why is because I've been doing a lot of this with a lot of resistance. I've been doing a lot of it nervous. I've been doing a lot of it uncertain. Okay? I've been fearing forward, and I've been showing up scared. Okay? Because I recognize that if I keep thinking about it enough, and not just thinking about it, not just ruminating about it, but I feel called to do it, then that must mean something, okay? There was even today, before I sat down to record, there was moments of resistance because I was just thinking about, man, there's so many things I have to do. I feel like there's so many things I have to accomplish. And there was just this underlying resistance that I had. So one of the things I did is I took a break, okay? I made it a point to rest. You are allowed to rest even when there are moments of resistance. You are allowed to rest on your journey towards achieving what you desire to have the most. Like, rest is a requirement. It's not a luxury. It's a requirement. All right? And as I found myself in that space after I rested, I was like, okay, cool. I think I'm ready to do this now. Sometimes you got to allow yourself the opportunity of a later time, okay? So say, for example, something is not happening in this moment, but it's still important. Let's keep that in mind. Something may not have happened in the perceived moment or the expected moment. Okay, that's fine. But does it mean I give up? No, not necessarily, because everything seems to be working still. So why would I give up? Okay. Me not being there yet, it does not mean that I'm not on my way. It does not mean I'm not taking the right direction. All right? So recognize the difference between resistance that is aligned with your growth versus resistance that is aligned with rejection or a need to redirect. Because anytime you are trying to acquire things in resistance that's not for you, you will experience a lot of rejection, a lot of confusion, a lot of disappointment. Very little clarity and very little continuity. Okay? And be okay with showing up scared. I promise you, that is some of the best work you will do. If you are willing to show up scared, okay? You are willing to show up uncertain, but you're willing to show up with what you know and what you're capable of, and you just do it. Right? Like I said, 7 years in almost, and I have created so much because of the one thing I decided to do, uncertain, okay? Afraid, nervous, doubtful, sometimes very hesitant, okay? Because I knew that this was bigger than me. And I knew that there was something bigger in me that I needed to create, right? So my own responsibility. So remember, it is okay to show up scared. Like I said, resistance is truly my love language, because I know when I have moments of resistance about certain things, that's usually me getting closer to love, right? And sometimes you will find resistance in a release, okay? And because you're trying to hold on so much, okay, so because you are so resistant to letting go, that's usually an indication of the necessity of letting this thing go, or releasing this person, or releasing this behavior, okay? When we are facing resistance, that is usually an indicator that, hey, the reward is probably much bigger. So again, one of the best ways to just learn if it's resistance because you're on the horizon of something new, something that's for you, versus resistance towards being rejected, is how disappointed and confused are you, all right? And how is everything else operating around you? What does your life feel like? Because right now, my life feels amazing, right? And I've been facing resistance. However, everything else in life outside of this moment of resistance is solid. Okay, it doesn't mean that conflict isn't happening, doesn't mean that doubt isn't taking place, but everything feels like love. And I think that's so amazing. Okay, learn that love is just not this conditional thing, it is a constant. And when you can think of love as showing up in different variations or in different aspects of your life, I think you'll have a better understanding of, like, when I am resistant to something, sometimes that's just me understanding that this is important, okay, this matters to me, but also this is probably a calling to my purpose and who I am. All right. So I just wanted to share that with you guys as we near the end of the year. This year has been wild in terms of what I've been capable of doing and a lot of what I said I would do. It's just been a very turning point for what I am actually capable of, and me actually recognizing that, because of how many times I faced resistance and how many times I was still willing to show up. Okay? So just remember, sometimes it is okay, it is actually necessary to do things scared. Because if you could do something scared, you are now telling yourself, hey, I am capable of more than this moment of doubt and insecurity and fear. I am more than that. Okay? So take care of yourselves and take yourself into this new year with that confidence. And of course, take flight.